what we're going to talk about is how ChatGPT can kind of help co-DM. And I know that sounds sad and it sounds a little dystopian, kind of like the movie Her, right? Like I'm replacing friends with a computer. But it was super interesting. We're talking about doing like a one-off or a couple sessions of Lord of the Rings D&D for M of 1. I don't have time to go read every book from Lord of the Rings. I love the movies, the shows. I love the 3 books and The Hobbit. And this is just like infinite knowledge scraped from, thousands of millions of web pages. Just here you go. So I was just right here and we'll just start off. So I was going to write something like, what would a good session be to play D&D in Lord of the Rings? And maybe I don't want to write session. Maybe I want to write what's a good setting. Setting's probably a better word. So you type it in, and then it does this kind of fake personality. It feels very robotic still, but it's really interesting. So a good setting for playing Dungeons & Dragons, D&D, in the world of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings would be the world of Middle-earth during the Third Age. This would allow players to explore the iconic locations, interact with the races and cultures that are present in the books and films such as hobbits, dwarves, elves, and men. What about a time in the Second Age, which is what Rings of Power is? So a D&D campaign set in the Second Age could center around the adventures of a group of these faithful Númenóreans and their allies as they work to oppose Sauron and his followers. So that sounds pretty interesting to me. So we could say, like, where could our players start in Númenor? Right here, if I'm reading this, I really like the second idea that they wrote. So they say another option would be for the characters to be members of the faithful, a small minority of Númenóreans who still follow the old ways and worship the Valar. They could be living in secret communities in Númenor, trying to hold on to their beliefs and practices while avoiding persecution from the ruling powers. Both the show and the movies really don't touch on like the deities of Lord of the Rings, right? They kind of leave it as what's happening now. They don't touch all that. So right here already, like the worshiping of the Valar, that's a concept we don't hear often in the shows or media. I like the idea of the faithful. What event could they encounter? Real intelligently, they're like, cool, so we know you're talking about faithful in Númenor. I didn't talk about Númenor at all, but they get it. And I say they as if it's a human. It's going to be... AI is going to screw me, man. For the first one, what artifacts? Right, again, like, I'm not the encyclopedia of Lord of the Rings, right? I don't know all the artifacts. Like, maybe they can pull something in there. One option could be the ancient texts that contain knowledge and wisdom from the First Age passed on by the Eldar. These texts could contain information on the world's ancient history, powerful magic, and the truth about the world and the nature of the One Ring. All of a sudden, it's seeding kind of weird lore that our players could like dive into. And if we were playing with like Lauren, not Coolco, she could like latch onto those little facts that she might love, right? Like those little tidbits that, again, that maybe the movies haven't really dwelled on, but things that she read in the books and really enjoyed. Thinking like that first one, the idea of the ancient texts that bring in the Eldar, it brings in ideas of magic and the nature of the One Ring. I think there's a lot of like context in that first one. So the ending, after it gives us our options, it says the characters could have to navigate through various obstacles and challenges. Whether it's avoiding being caught by the king's men or figuring out how to get the artifacts out of Númenor, perhaps by taking a dangerous sea voyage to Middle-earth, these artifacts and texts could also be tied into the main plot of the campaign. I'm going to like step back a little bit, right? So we have our idea. We're going to be Númenóreans. We're going to try to get texts from the First Age off of Númenor through probably ship to Middle-earth. But what if the ChatGPT could give me some locations? And I'm going to be specific. I'm going to say 5 locations. So Romana, Osgiliath, Adunai, Meneltanarma. It's giving us really big locations in Númenor. And again, with a one-off, we don't want to be going all over this continent, right? And that's my mistake. I just gave 5 locations in Númenor for my players. So I'm going to write, can you give me 5 locations in Romana? What ChatGPT appears to be doing is kind of scraping the infinite information online. One kind of anecdote, so I was playing with this earlier, and I was creating a setting in Mirkwood. And I was like, what if Treebeard was there? And what if somehow I was fighting Treebeard, right? Like this alternate Lord of the Rings story. And ChatGPT was like, I need some information about Treebeard. And they said Treebeard is fire resistant. I was like, that doesn't make any sense, ChatGPT. He's a plant. And ChatGPT replied, he goes, yes, it's a plant that should be weak to fire, except Tolkien said that the Treebeard, the Ents, are resistant to fire. So I Googled it, and it proved like better knowledge than I have of Lord of the Rings. So we have 5 locations. We have the shipyards, the market, the harbor, the Temple of Varda, and the Golden Goose. All right, so our players could start in the market. They could need to get to the Temple of Varda and then get to the shipyards. I'm gonna dig even deeper. Can you give me 5 rooms in the Temple of Varda? I know my players are gonna spend time here, so let's get the Temple of Varda explained a little bit in a little bit more detail. So the 5th room inside of the temple is the treasury. The treasury is a room where the temple's most valuable and sacred artifacts are kept. It's a secure room with a guard. It could be where the characters could find powerful magic items and ancient artifacts that could aid them in their journey, like books. But we're gonna keep digging deeper. So we know that they gave us 5 locations: the entrance hall, the sanctuary, the observatory, the library, the treasury. Easy things for me to get the players to go through. But it gave us the guard. So what if I go, what is the stat block of the guard in the treasury? I forgot to tell it what D&D we were playing with edition. In my past chats with it, I've always said 5th edition. So right now, this code here says, but I can give you an example of possible stat block for a guard in 5th edition. So already, I don't know if it's pulling from old conversations I've had, or if it's just pulling from like, this is what everyone's talking about online. But it's already being like, hey, this is the edition of D&D you're going to need for this. So we have it guard, medium humanoid, armor class, hit points, speed, all the stats. The guard makes 2 melee weapon attacks. It has a longsword, a javelin, and a shield bash. And then it also has special traits. Cool. What about this? Can you give me a guard with a bow? This is one critique that Wizards has come under attack with. Is in the monster manual, you only get like 1 goblin. Here, they gave me a guard, but I'm like, hey, can I get some variations of guards so that each enemy in the room feels unique? So it's not just giving me what I asked for. And I think that's the important thing to notice here. It's like giving me what I asked for, and it's almost like building ideas with me. Like, that's really cool. How about a cleric in here too? You're like, what? We got all the stuff. We have extra traits now called archery training and volley, replacing the shield and things like that and the other guard. So we know that the challenge rating 2 would mean that for each one of these in here, you would want 4 2nd level. So if we to have both of these in here, we would want a party of 4th level. Just like things you would need to know about DMing. So we have a temple, we have some guards. I think all of that's kind of working out and really interesting. I think the other important one would be the shipyard. What is at the shipyard? Again, it will reference the conversation before, so I don't need to get super specific. I don't need to re-mention Numenor or anything. It is likely to be a bustling and busy place filled with a variety of different activities and sites. There are a few things that you might find at a shipyard in Numenor. This is all the kind of stuff, like, if you guys are going to the shipyard, how am I going to start, like, explaining it, right? And, I mean, this text is as well as written as any, like, D&D book I've ever had. Can you provide a shipyard encounter? So it's really stuck on the theft of the kill weight. So we're going to try something real soon, because we're seeing a pattern, right? Like, if we look at the admin building, it had to do with the missing piece, which is obviously talking about the keel that we've been talking about. Let me try to stop generating. I don't like the idea of the kill weight. Have something else? Okay, so it's already more exciting, right? So the players are in the shipyard, and suddenly they hear the sound of an explosion coming from one of the dry docks. They rush to investigate and find that one of the ships is on fire, and the workers are struggling to contain the flames. This feels like a whole nother session maybe on its own. And what I think it's important, just kind of like when you get a D&D material from Wizard of the Coast, it's in our power to kind of customize it and pull little bits out like we like. I don't expect anyone to read all this and be like, I'm going to take all of this. But I may take some of it. Like, I think this idea of a fire breaking out when you get to the docks is really interesting, right? It's like a way of that roller coaster of emotion. Like, all of a sudden, the players think they're almost out, and then something happens. I've got my storyline. I know that I'm in the city of Numenor. I've got my 5 kind of major locations in Numenor. The only thing I might want to ask it for, and we're going to scroll up here. Okay, so if we look at the temple locations, we had this treasury where we're kind of thinking like that's where the players are going to find their book, but it also talks about magical items. Can you give me an item description and magic ability for something in the treasury? Because I just want something more fun than just books, right? You go in there, you know that's full of magic stuff. Your players are going to obviously ask you for something in that room. So it's going to give us the crown of the High Priestess, a simple, unassuming crown made of gold and encrusted with diamonds, rubies, and sapphires. This crown is an artifact of ancient Numenor, said to have been worn by the High Priestess of Varda herself. Super cool. I'm not familiar with commune, so what does commune do? Here's the spell's description as it appears in the player's handbook. Everything you need! I would say, too, like, as you guys are watching this, you can see it takes a minute to get the information, but I feel fairly confident, like, if I'm DMing and I need something, like a character's name, rather than trying to come up with something on the spot, I could see myself just being like, what's the guard's name? So, yeah, I mean, this is just like, I don't know, we spent 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes of just asking questions, and like all the ideas were ours, right? Like we knew we wanted to play Lord of the Rings. We decided that we didn't want to play in the movies, maybe more of the recent Amazon show. So we narrowed it down, and then it just helped us. It gave us locations. It gave us specific locations in that location. It gave us stat blocks. It gave us reasons for things that could happen in each area. DMing can be a very lonely thing, and I can never talk to my players about what I'm planning, right? You're very much like designing and planning on your own in this like little bubble, and this just allows me to like kind of like bounce ideas. I don't even need someone to respond necessarily. I just need to be like, hey, how would I do this? And just be like, or is this a good idea? And it's just like someone to like validate, like, oh, you're right, a Numenor setting is cool. It also, DMing can be scary because you're expected to know everything right offhand, right? Even that spell, that commune spell, right? You could be like, I'm gonna use commune, and then I'd have to open my books and look for it. Or I could treat this almost like that old search engine, Ask Jeeves, and just be like, hey, ChatGPT, what's commune? And all of a sudden, like, I now know because it just like gave me the text for it. So it's helping us plan, and I think if we were to run this, it would help me run it successfully. That's just the beginning of how ChatGPT can revolutionize your session preparation, allowing you to be a more confident and relaxed dungeon master, while also enhancing the gaming experience for your players. Head on over to mof1.network, join our community on Slack, and share your own stories of using ChatGPT to improve your Dungeons & Dragons sessions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see these techniques in action during our upcoming live plays.